It seems like you get a death sentence in the Western world if you dare to criticise aspects of the Islamic faith. In Sweden, this man, who admittedly took things to the absolute extreme in a bid to make his feelings known, regularly burnt copies of the Quran. 'Last night, he was shot dead in his apartment. Now, I don't condone setting fire to copies of the Quran, and I absolutely see how that could cause anger. But just think about this. If somebody set fire to a copy of the Bible or the Torah, would they be shot dead in their own home? I suspect not. In France, teacher Samuel Paty was falsely accused of showing obscene pictures of the Prophet Muhammad to school children. That was a lie. A girl who wasn't even in his class at the time made it up. He was beheaded in the street by an Islamist. Before that, we had Charlie Hebdo, didn't we? They ran a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad on their front cover. Then this happened. 12 people were killed because of that front cover. We all know about the Batley Grammar School incident where a teacher remains in police hiding with his family after allegedly showing a picture of the Prophet to some kids, and people gathered outside the school gates calling for his blood. There was a mob outside that school for days.
The incident from Monday, 22nd of March, must also be investigated from a criminal perspective, given that it was a clear attempt to stir up religious hatred. We also use this opportunity to call upon the entire British Muslim community to review the materials being taught in their children's schools.
Now, I do wonder if a teacher had said something that Jewish or Christian students found offensive, or made a joke about one of the Hindu gods, whether they'd have received death threats and been forced into hiding for the rest of their lives. And then there was the autistic child who accidentally scuffed a copy of the Quran at school. He also received death threats, and his mum had to go to the local Islamic centre and beg for forgiveness.
I've had to call the police. He has received death threats. He has received threats that he will be beaten up if he goes back to school. He's absolutely petrified. But I don't want anybody to be prosecuted.
Yet again, I'll ask, if a copy of the Bible had been scuffed, would we have seen the parents of a hypothetical Muslim child forced into a church to beg for their child's life? I doubt it. It does appear to be a potential death sentence if you do something, even accidentally, that offends certain elements of the Muslim community. I wonder whether that's why this is allowed. Or even why this is allowed. But this is not allowed. A Christian woman praying silently in her own head outside an abortion clinic.
That's what it's doing. Is you standing to be part of the protest?
No, I'm not protesting.
Are you praying?
I might be praying in my head.
So I'll ask you once more, will you voluntarily come with us now to the police station for me to ask you some questions about today and other days where there are allegations that you've broken public space in particular?
If I've got a choice, then no.
I wonder if that fear of being put on some kind of hit list is why police seem to bend over backwards to please some aspects of the Muslim community.
Salam alaikum. There is one tier of policing that implies to all of us, and that means that we police without fear or favour. Shukran.
Would police ever ask for permission from the elders to address a Christian audience, as indeed another police officer did at that time as well? Again, I doubt it. And if a group of Jewish people attacked a police station, or even, let's just say, a group of football fans, would you not expect the police to come out and deal with them with force? Well, over to Rochdale now.
We saw you. We know you're in there. Come out. Explain yourself. Why has only one officer been suspended? What about the rest of them?
I don't think the particular community in that clip got in much trouble. Why not? Look, I don't think anyone should go out and set fire to a copy of the Quran or needlessly offend Muslims or be Islamophobic. But what I am saying is there appears to be only one religion in Europe where you might be shot, stabbed or beheaded if you cause offence to some of its followers. Let's get thoughts from my panel this evening. We've got former Tory MP Anna Firth, we've got Lord Bailey, and we have also got ex-Labour Party advisor Matthew Larser. Anna, I'll start with you on this. Do you think that basically we now have a situation, possibly have had for some while, where if you do offend aspects of the Islamic community, it's a death sentence?
Well, I obviously do think that because Sir David Amess, who I succeeded, he was actually butchered by an Islamic extremist, not because he offended the Islamic religion, because of how he voted against Syria. And the extremist who murdered him said that he had listened to the rantings of Abu Muhammad al-Nani, the Syrian ISIS leader, who had made speech after speech. And that was the first time that followers of Islam were actually instructed in his first speech to go and kill non-Muslims in non-Muslim countries. So, yes, we absolutely do have a problem. And we've discussed many times the Prevent programme and Shawcross's review, which has pointed out that 67% of terror incidents from 2018 to today were due to Islamic extremism, and it occupies 3/4 of MI5's workload. So, yes, of course, we've got an issue, and we need to, it's integration. We have got to deal with this.
Again, I will stress, believe it or not, everybody, I have absolutely no desire whatsoever to go out and set fire to a copy of the Quran. That man did, OK? And I can understand why that's inflammatory. However, he did get shot to death for it. And it does appear as though that is a kind of reaction that seems to be happening quite a bit, whether you're beheaded or whatever, if you offend Islam. What do you make of that, Sean?
Look, I'm a card-carrying Christian, so the idea of burning the Bible to me is very offensive. But what needs to be looked at here is what reaction does it cause, and what is that community asked to do in response, and what did the police do in response? One of the things that's beginning to generate community tension is the idea that certain people get dealt with in different ways. That's where the authorities have to step up and make sure that everybody's dealt with the same. What's happened is Sweden, of course, is illegal. It was illegal before, and it will remain illegal, but now it's how it's dealt with. But here in this country, the authorities have to really be able to put their hand on their heart and say, actually, we don't deal with people differently because they're from a different religion. Because when you looked at the marches we had in London, that caused great consternation in many other communities because it looked like there wasn't a fair hand being dealt. And that's a question we need to answer here.
Do you think there's an aspect of fear that grips our political institutions, our police force, maybe our education system as well, Matthew, when it comes to, you know, basically in this country you can say or do what you like when it comes to other religions, but if you criticise Islam, it is a death sentence?
Well, I think that has been historically. I think that the left didn't cover itself in glory in the late 80s with the Satanics versus affair when Salman Rushdie's book was being burned on the streets of Bradford, and sort of left liberal apologists for that at the time were pretty disgraceful. I think there have obviously been isolated examples of that since, but I think that actually partly because of things we talked about on this sofa just last week about the grooming gangs, etc. I think that people have now said that we must be honest about what's happening in communities, whatever the community is, and we shouldn't pander to any community, but while showing respect for all communities.
The shame is it took so long and we've had so many terrible incidences to get to this point. And I really want to reflect on the police's behaviour and politicians' behaviour. Certain politicians behave that way because they don't want to lose the vote. Other politicians because they don't want to create community tensions. We had a police officer in London who was in a Chris Cover case, who was investigated in a very particular way, in an extraordinary way, because it might cause community tension. That is not the way to deal with something. We have a legal system and we need to follow those rules.
Absolutely.
Do you think you should be able to burn a copy of the Quran? Do you think it's something that should be allowed to happen, or is it a crime? Should it be a crime? What do you think?
Look, I believe in freedom of expression. You know, it's a basic human right. We live by that in this country. I would not burn a copy of the Quran. But if someone were to burn a copy... I'm a Christian as well, but if someone were to burn a copy of the Bible, I would consider that to be deeply disrespectful, extremely rude. I would not want anyone... But I would not expect... It's not even... That wouldn't even be an offence, in my opinion.
Here's the thing. That wouldn't cross most Muslim... The vast majority of Muslim people wouldn't jump out of the house and come and murder you, or even come and shout at you over it. But some would, and more than in most communities. The important thing here, though, even as a card-carrying card-carrying Christian, I don't believe it should be illegal to burn a Quran, a Bible or a Torah or a humanist book for that matter, because it would lead to a blasphemy law. And that would put us in a far bigger problem.
We don't have blasphemy laws in this country, and I think that's for a reason. But we're missing the point here. There's no other religion that consistently leads to these violent attacks.
Is that fair, Matthew?
Well, I think clearly partly because of geopolitical issues which have involved the Middle East and Muslim areas of the world more than others. I think we have seen particular sort of tensions and anger within the Muslim community, frankly, over a period that stretches back to the Iraq War 20 odd years ago. I'd say what I do think, just watching the footage that we saw earlier, is whoever the community leaders are, I hate that phrase, community leaders. Yeah. And what you see is not the police talking to ordinary Muslims, but sort of doing a little video to keep people who are on their community relations committee happy, and I don't like that at all. And we shouldn't be having that. The police need to just step back and police us all, not community leaders.
There are no community leaders. They're always
self-appointed.
Absolutely, and they're always the most militant, and that's the problem. If you pander to the militant, they become more militant, not less.
The thing is, it's not just community leaders. What about Abu Hamza? What about Amjan Chowdhury? You know, the hate clerics that we have had. Unfortunately, we've got rid of them. Why have they all come from this religion?
The thing is, I'll put this to you, Matthew, I think it's becoming increasingly obvious these days when you see stories like that, and you just do a compare and contrast, don't you? The autistic child who scuffed a copy of the Quran at school, and his mum is, you know, there in the local Islamic centre, basically saying, look, he's had death threats, please don't let any harm come to him, but I don't want anyone prosecuted for anything they might have said in the meantime. And you just have to flip that on its head. If he'd gone into school and done something, ripped a page out of the Bible, or there's no way in a million years that ends up in a church.
I think it's the walking on it's the walking on eggshells, isn't it? And I don't think any good comes of walking on eggshells or talking to community leaders. They're rather in the same bracket. And I think that people need to relax. They need to realise that if people are from a particular, if they're angry about something and what they're saying is out of order, just because they're from one community, they shouldn't be excused.
I think it's what we do about it is actually the police and politicians and the press grow a pair and take people on. Because what happens is, again, I go back to one point, if you keep appeasing people, I mean, we should learn this with the whole Second World War situation. You keep appeasing people, they keep pushing. You give them an inch, they take a mile, and we are in that situation. And police officers now, senior police officers, not a beat officer, right? Could they really put their hand on their heart and say, well, we dealt with that the same, even though it was a particular religion?
They're terrified.
Yeah, and
they're terrified of stuff like.
And then they end up doing silly things, so they're walking on eggshells.
Perfect example, Patrick. You mentioned it in your opening. The Batley Grammar School. Now, imagine if a teacher had put a cartoon of Jesus Christ. We've had those sorts of
Life of Brian, anyone?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw that. I watched that in school.
There you go.
I watched the Life of Brian in school.
Now, I remember Life of Brian and I remember my mother not being at all happy about me seeing that, because at that stage it was considered to be quite offensive. Yeah. It was pushing the envelope.
Still is.
But we accept that because we're a tolerant country. We should have the same rules for everybody. If you put a card, that teacher should not have been hounded out of that school. He should not have been having to be in hiding.
Technically, we do. This is the point. Technically, we do have the same rules for everybody. Let's be clear about that. What we don't have is the same culture when we deal with people. Right? We have a culture
because of nervousness.
Yeah. And that's what needs to go. Yes. Like, even if you talk about people smuggling, they've made some new rules about boat pieces.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, that's not the issue. The issue is enforcing the laws we already have.
All right. Well, look, good. I do quite enjoy actually when it's more of a discussion than anything. But we'll have plenty of opportunity to have a catastrophic row. There we go.